I'm being a bit, but I'm going to share screen because the first, just as the theme said, picture this. The first half of the set is ekphrastic poems based on a series of Japanese prints that I've been, taken off some pages on Facebook, and I have about 200 all stashed away somewhere. I've only done a few, but this is the most recent few that I've written. So, and then the other poems, some I think I've read before, but this is the first time these have all been put together in one set there. And there's a story, there's some about what my experiences last summer, and also there's some I think that have a quite a strong visual kind of element to them. So I'll just, whoops, share screen. If I may, it's okay. So this kind of collective heading, Japonica. And this first one, yeah, a pair of crows in moonlight. A pair of crows caught by moonlight. A bare branch stripped by winter's feckless moods makes a ragged perch for two crows backlit by a bloodless moon. Dull superstition brands them as harbingers of hapless doom, only lacking a third to make up a murderous triumvirate, but merely opportunistic scavengers after all, at the behest, at the beck and call of those three false sisters who weave their intransigent cycle, the whore and weft and final cut on their infernal loom. And like the Trois Corbiers in a traditional sad refrain, their leering beaks are whetted on the seared bark of a deadened limb as they make their raucous mane. That's the first one. Second one is another bird theme. This is an egret on Snowy Branch. So these prints, they range in period like from things, like from sort of 16th, 17th century Hokusai type, artists, and then into the contemporary 20th century, more modern um, prints or styles. So this one I've titled Egret Set Against a Snowy Backdrop. Neck sunk in, its head appears as if welded to its shoulders. One stick-like leg holds up milk-white plumage against the black and starry backdrop. The bladed iron-hard beak cuts into the treacly thick blackness, sharper than the daggers of bitter frost that contort the snow-gripped branch that convulses as if awed beneath the stony, implacable glare that can outstare the moon reflected in a petrified frozen mere. It carries the mantle, the spitting image of tenacious obstinacy, yet it could not evade the threat to its being, all for the sake of that snowy white decoration, to satiate the vanity of some foppish duke, or to dandyfy a stern-faced First Lord of the High Admiralty. This aigrette, its French origin meaning silver heron, was the victim of its own perfection. See how it stands there, rigid as a steely pike, with that glorious breastwork all puffed out, impervious to the probing fingers of icy cold winter's nights. And third one, such an interesting image. I love some of that, the style, the way there's a lot of Japanese prints that it's very sort of reduced to sort of the basic style outline or colors, almost not abstract, but sort of in a very sort of spare kind of manner. This one's full snow moon, full snow moon. 15 shades of grey seems enough to cover the wintry palette beneath the benign full snow moon. Only a thin scar of fire-hardened rock seems determined to resist the snow's cold grip, while a thorny tree limbs stretched out wide, is crucified in an ecstasy of agony. The thinly veiled moon overlooks this scene of frozen pain, wearing a serene, nonchalant face of non-committal indifference. On to sort of flower theme. I was interested when I was reading and watching Japanese films and getting into Japanese culture. Reading like the tales of Genji and watching Japanese films. This sort of flower culture that they have is very sophisticated. Um, and this one here is this image here of a lady occupied with arranging. I think it's called ikebana, the style of flower arranging. There's very sort of strict rules and ways of doing it. There's the way of flowers. With such an air of refinement, she kneels tenderly, tending the supple stems and branches, making each one come alive to its own potential, not offered loosely as a random spray, placed there in some thoughtless, haphazard display, a mere decorative spread of shape and color, form without meaning. The art of Ikebana, a dignified accomplishment with humanity placed between earth and heaven, a fragile balance, a way to calm cloudy minds where clarity of thought is most needed. It is the way of flowers meant for an altarpiece to offer inspiration, for a Buddha to show the way to enlightenment wrapped up in a Lotus Sutra. So, and then it's another flower related theme. Again, big thing, I think, in Japanese art and culture. A spring awakening. With her fine headpiece and richly delicate silk kimono, the lady acknowledges the deeper meaning of tenderly pink plum blossoms. Together with the Hanami celebrations of emerging petals decorating winter darkened branches of the ubiquitous sakura, she will delight in preparing the sweet and tangy infusions of plum blossom tea or cook up delicious flavorings for alcoholic beverages to go with the rich sauces that accompany reviving spring feasts. And this is the last one of the ekphrastic poems in the Japanese theme. So Winter in Aizu, which is it's in a region near Fukushima, and it's sort of like you've got the sort of coastal plain, and then further inland, it's very mountainous, like many kind of parts of Japan. Yeah, winter in Aizu. Warm summers in Fukushima Prefecture turn into cold winters and heavy snowfall, which deforms the sloping wood rooftops into something resembling a scene from German expressionist cinema. Everything looks top-heavy, while a singular figure wanders alone through the swollen drifts that blur the sharp profiles of neat, functional homes. A single dash of red stands out readily against white clouds of cloying snow, appearing defiantly alone, stranded between the darkened lower timbers with no discernible reason to be outside, except perhaps being in transit, returning home, or travelling outbound on some urgent errand. Meanwhile, time seems frozen in a moment, mimicking the rigid icicles hanging like dog's teeth from numbed, snow-capped gables, waiting for relief from this stiff imprisonment. So now, excuse me, I took a drink. These are some of the poems here that I wrote when I was up in Aberdeenshire visiting my good friend Finn. This is poetry festival, and I was going through some sort of I don't know, strange times, emotionally, and also with kind of issues going on at the time. And there were moments when I felt almost paranoid, but there were moments when I seemed to get a great deal of relief and inspiration from what was going on around me, and getting away from certain people. But so at the stone circle, stricken. Standing by the stone circle where James Boswell had once stood, there seems a false sense of time passing, having been reconstructed on at least two separate occasions. It is not clear if they even occupy their original placement by their megalithic founders and architects. No plaques to mark the occasion or inscribed foundation stone. Disturbed by an errant tenant farmer in the early 1800s, it was apparently rebuilt, but in the wrong place, classed as a folly, and the four extant stones present in Boswell's time supplemented to make six, a much neater number. In the 1950s, it had become a tea garden for TB patients convalescing at the nearby stricken house, built in a neoclassical style and which has itself become an abandoned marker of changing times. Hollowed out and roofless, just another set of standing stones, but now with wild accelerating pace, laying waste to man's grandiloquent follies of grandeur and delusion, building monuments to pass the time, leaving their stamp temporarily on the slowly evolving landscape. But as I lay my hand on the sun-warmed flanker next to its recumbent neighbour, I sense in my own errant, wild imagination a strange evocation rising up in me through those ancient stones. And so I take in its offering gladly of time extending, moving through me in continuum. And next one. Again, in that kind of area. This was a place called Arden Park, Minslaw, and fellow poet Joe and I were invited to do a performance in the theatre there. I think it was the first time, and it was very enjoyable and successful. But I remember finding there was a place with lots of different trees and walks around there. And there was a place it was called the Sensory Garden. It was like a bower, and you could go in there. It was like little paths winding around and seats, and you could just sit there and just drink in the calm. And whatever was bothering you, or what was in your head, you could just let it drift away on the summer wind. So, sitting at peace, at one with the world with all its flaws, traps, and blind alleys, only the constant swish and swirl of high summer breezes to bend and push the leaves and tendrils in a tender, teasing motion. All of those bothersome thoughts, like whirling, angry wasps, banished. You are free to clear your head and let the healing enter into those vacated spaces in words that emanate from that hidden source that feeds the clear, rippling stream of your mind in full flow. Now you can let go of the world and find your peace hovering above the angry seas of delusion. Okay, so one was written when I was on my way back down from Scotland, and I stopped on first at my cousin's and then in Lincoln to visit my daughter and see my granddaughter for the first time. But it was again mixed emotions. I thought the idea of having to travel back to Reading and I'm missing all the people I'd been enjoying my time with and lying on my bed listening in the still darkness of a summer night. And all I could hear were these bloody dogs barking away. So at night, the dogs are barking. The sultry night air seems fractious, its smooth blackness being torn and frayed by the harsh bark of feckless dogs. Have they nothing else to do but cut into my broken train of thought? My stumbling imagination is caught on the sharp brambles of nagging doubts that have clung to me doggedly these past days. My mind feels uneasy and restless, and every vacated, empty thought space is a welcoming receptacle for gloomy iterations and ruminations. And the cycle keeps repeating, feeding greedily upon itself, while outside in that disquiet night, the dogs keep continually barking, while my tired eyes resist the pressing need to close them tight, looking for respite, drifting into contented sleep. Okay, no, I give that, let's pass on from Hebden Bridge one. And I'll read, this one was an earlier poem I read, I wrote few years back, 3 or 4 years ago. But it has that visual idea and also links in with the Japanese Japonica theme, and inspired by so looking at the works of Hokusai, also reading accounts about his experience, when he was when he was going through hard times, and he was he was really down on his luck. He would offer to sell a print for a a bowl of noodles. So when times were hard, and so then his main existence was like in the what was called the floating world, or we think of as the red light area, or like the Soho of Edo, sort of old Tokyo. What would you give for a double portion of noodles? A great wave in shades of Prussian blue, showering cherry blossom snowflakes over a distant sacred mountain. What price a piece of clandestine pleasure among paper houses in shaded narrow alleyways? Fragile palaces for fragile transient lives, short-lived ecstasies in a floating world, existing, hovering on the peripheries, just beyond the pale. Nothing is visible, everything is available. Where rivers flow like watered silk, ghosts blow in leaf-like through threadbare windows. Shadowy figures flicker under the eaves, while faint aromas of pine needles mix headily with stale ammonia. Elsewhere, here and there, vacant eyes witness events from behind gauze sails, barely blinking away the shallow light creeping through the cracks in shabby screens. Flashes of electric yellow emerge from a leaden sky that presses down upon a pre-dawn landscape drained of colour. Welcome to the floating world, where nothing is for free, where each breath draws its own toll. And okay, I've been writing a few sonnets. I've got as far as number 89. This is number 84. I think it's another one after this as well. Far Horizons. I can't quite remember what it was about that distant hazy line of horizon and what lay beyond. I only know that it pulled at me, if just to satisfy my latent curiosity, to see what was on the other side, crossing over the line separating me from all that wondrous splendor that hid behind a cloak of invisibility, adding luster to the great unknown. I guess that was the vital spark in me that ignited the urge to be somewhere else. There's a short poem. This is a February poem, quite appropriate. February, there she blows, kind of poem. And the weather we've been having recently is a bit there she blows kind of weather, with the rain and wind, and the Thames is like a lake now. If you go down to Thames Valley Park, you can't walk down the towpath at the moment. All right, February, there she blows. It's a cloud scuddery kind of day today, where the wind blows juddily, the slim branches of tall birch trees sway as magpies swoop madly on sudden swirls of mercurial squalls of icy airs, and the clouds pass by without a qualm as they wait patient for the skies to calm. Okay, this one I haven't read before, I don't think. It's Ways of Seeing. I was thinking about I was watching a lot of art documentaries on TV. So suddenly I started thinking about all the different styles and imagery and how we convey the visual things in the sceneries, and also how it connects with our vision of the world. Ways of seeing. Pointillism, pinpoint exactness versus broad brushstrokes, building up layer upon layer, adding to an undercoat of wash, foundational. Archaeology picks the bones out of that mystery that is the past. Keep digging down, you will find it eventually. Looking is a state of mind. It is too easy to feign blindness, to look the other way. But if you want to see the truth, you have to be courageous or masochistic. But the reward is the feeling of being cleansed. Look, no black spots to hide. You can walk tall and look the world in the eye. Okay, let's got a couple more uh, to go. This is the most recent one, sonnet number 89, Perfect Days. And I've just been reading all these reviews of the latest Wim Wenders film, which he filmed in Japan, and about the guy who is a toilet operative or public toilet operative in Tokyo. And I've got to go and see the film because I've read the reviews and the interviews like the Wim Wenders did, I think the other week in the Guardian. And so this is my kind of take on that. Perfect days. What is it to live lightly in the world, to find elevation in the mere mundane, taking delight in how each day unfurls, seeing beauty in a single drop of rain? How should we take pleasure in simple joys, in ways that leave no unsightly footprint on nature's pristine features, unalloyed, not marred by any muddied imprint? It is the joyful wonder of being free of the heavy weight of expectation, of seeing true splendor in simple things, to receive love without hesitation, a beam of sunlight leaking through leaf-crowned trees. These are the keys to unlock perfect days. Excuse me, I'll take another sip of water. And finally, the last one. This is an old poem I wrote quite a while back, but I just looked back at it. I was just sorting out which what poems to do in this set, and I love it's a bit, it's a bit sad, but it's again it's got that very strong visual element to it, and also there are elements of sort of suggesting I have an obsession with the moon as an image because it kind of keeps on popping up in I think at least about three or four of the poems so far. The moon has been mentioned. This is no exception. It's called Moonlight Lullaby. The moon hung in the night like a cradle rocking, and I sang a lullaby to sing the child to sleep. In my mind's eye, I saw the heavens open wide their arms to soothe my aching heart and bring me sweet release. A vagrant star accompanied the ship of the night with its golden sail all aglow, and my heart is hanging by a thread tonight. Won't you pick it up before you go? Okay, well, thank you very much. There, I'm going to stop sharing. Wow, it seems to have gone by really quickly. I don't know. I think maybe I've overspent my time, but it seemed very quick to me. But
Yeah, wow, it was like a timeless moment. Thank you so much, Ian. Oh my word. What bliss to hear the uh, absolute magic. And everyone, please, you can open up your mics and give Ian a round of applause or comments. And I'm going to look over the pictures I took of people.
Ian, the
That was
illuminating.
Bravo!
absolutely beautiful. Just
Excellent.
Thank you.
heartwarming.
Beautiful work.
Superb.
I write better than I talk, but I just, it's so elegant. The simplicity of it and your use of language. I get annoyed because you're British, you know, they always compare the British and the Americans. But I mean, it is just elegant and humble, you know, that you let things be what they are. I mean, all of the different descriptions and looking and observe. And I loved, you know, the choice of the pictures and representations. The simplicity, you know, the minimalist. You were looking for a word when you were talking. You said it's not exactly modernist. I think, yeah, we're looking for minimalist, you know, the simplicity that everything is said in such simple ways. But I think it reflects your poetry, which is probably why you're attracted to those things.
Yeah. Well, I always appreciate your comments, Therese. They're so succinct and detailed. And I never, when I'm kind of I can never do that. And I feel a bit sort of, you know, bit of a fraud, like when I'm listening to other people's beautiful poems and that. I can never quite, when in the moment, write down in the same way that you do,
Right.
such detailed comments and analysis, which you know,
Well, I
always,
can't write poetry like you. I wish I could. I wish I had the command of language that you had. I
well,
mean, I
thank
do, but you know, it's not a competition. It makes me joyful when I hear beautiful things or see beautiful things.
Absolutely.
It adds to my pleasure.
Oh, thank you, Therese. That's a wonderful compliment.
Your work is
Yes,
always
I want to second that, not a competition thing. They all both beautiful
Yeah.
poets.
Yeah. We can celebrate each other's linguistic victories with the joy of deep listening. I love this moonlight lullaby where you have this this. So I'll just read the beginning. The moon hung in the night at the cradle rocking, and I sang a lullaby, sing the child to sleep. In my mind's eye, I saw the heavens open wide their arms to soothe my aching heart and bring me sweet relief.
Mm.
Oh my, what lush lyricism there. And then you can do, of course, the bleak streak as well, you know, from a leaden sky that presses down on a pre-dawn landscape drained of color. Oh boy, it's that's exactly right. And this song for the floating world, what a gift that poem is for all of us. You know, showering cherry blossom snowflakes over a distant sacred mountain. What price a piece of clandestine pleasure among paper houses in shaded, narrow alleyways? I could go on and on. I feel like I've collected a chapbook, you know, a little anthology of the magic lyrical poetry of Ian J. McKenzie. So that's marvelous.
Thank you, Ian, for that. I really enjoyed it. There was such a centre to it, which I loved. You know, it wasn't apologising. It wasn't. It was just completely as it was, you know, and I like that. Seems very sincere,
Yeah.
very sincere and meaningful
Totally sensitive.
and sensitive.
You
Yeah.
opened your heart up to us.
Yeah, Ian, I think you
Yeah.
have a way of looking at the world, a beautiful way of looking at the world, and you have the language then to describe those feelings, to describe the picture of what you're looking at. It's a really nice gift.
Thank you, James. Thank you.
Absolutely. And you know, my friends, there are some chapbook contests and full volume contests, and ending on the 29th, and also publishers closing their submission windows on the 29th. And I put something in our Spoken World online group with some magazines that are closing the 29th.
Yeah,
But
that-
I especially encourage you, Ian. I know there's only a couple days, three full days left, but Robert Pinsky is judging this contest for Wesleyan University Press, and it's for poets age 40 and over who, as he described, as Wesleyan describes it, are not in a hurry to make perfect poetry, to really get there and finally release something great. And Robert Pinsky is such a great poet. I've seen him maybe 4 times or something. And we talk sometimes online. He's a
David,
great
don't
person.
you have to unpublish though to enter that?
Don't you have what?
To be unpublished.
Well, for a collection, you can have. Oh, you mean an unpublished poet, like not a book out?
Yeah.
Yeah,
To
yeah.
enter it, I don't think that you can have published
No, I can.
your own work.
I can because I read it closely, and it talks about this does not include self-published work, or a chapbook like book, something like that. So that's good. That's good. I was happy to find out it's eligible. All right. Well, this has
Oh,
been
you
a
have to
beautiful.
post, you post that on my
Yes,
DM me then, David, with that. I'll have a look at that. That'll be really interesting.
absolutely. So it's
Okay.
it's well worthwhile. And just a note on that, it's 48 to 64 pages is what
Yeah.
they're looking for. So I cut a 2-page poem out of my Paris Impressions book, and now I can submit it. Okay, thank you so much, Ian.
Thank
Absolutely
you. Yeah. Thanks.
off the
Yeah.
charts. I'm glad.
I think I have to rush off to go for a pee now. I think that's,
Oh, it's funny. Okay, so let's
but
yeah,
I will
let's
be
finish
back.
it.
I
We
want to
have
hear
a
everybody
break.
else.
You've earned it, Ian.
Let's have another couple minutes
I'm
for our
right. I
break.
have.
And,
Yeah.
absolutely,
Thanks, everyone.
absolutely.
Lovely.
Speaking of picture this, I'm glad I took a lot of pictures, screenshots of that. All right, so let's just take another minute or two of finishing out our break, and then we'll have Martin and Avacha and more. That's exciting. So just refresh yourself. We'll be back 2 more minutes. At 3:33.